I believe the clock just struck 6 o'clock, so I will call this meeting, it's a town council budget work session. And to clarify and make sure, especially for our newer members, all committee meetings and meetings like this are recorded. We also, the only thing we live stream is our town council meetings. So yes, everything that we do in the meeting last night, was recorded. So any question about whether we're hiding anything or not. So
When will it be available on YouTube? Do you happen to know?
I'm sorry?
When will it be available on YouTube?
We aim to get it within 24 to 48 hours, so I believe the meeting last night will be available tomorrow.
Yes, it'll be.
Oh, this,
Tomorrow?
this one would be available tomorrow.
It should be finished by tonight, but tomorrow at the latest.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, you're welcome.
In the meeting that was last night.
That's what I meant, should be available by this evening, but tomorrow at the latest, and then
Okay.
the one today should be available tomorrow, the one we're in right now.
So we've got, of course, Val and Randy and Cheryl and the department heads here. Mainly, I don't think many of them are going to be presenting. They're here, I think, mainly for question and answer if we do so. My suggestion as we get started on this thing, and this is the 23rd budget I have set through with the town, is my suggestion to council members is close your laptops and listen. Get a lot more information that way. Then anything that you miss, you can pick it back up when the meeting comes up. So, Randy, I'm gonna turn it over to you, who probably is gonna turn it over to Val, but.
Okay. Got a brief, presentation. I guess what Val to get off.
So I just real briefly for the new members of council who may not be entirely familiar with governmental budgeting, and governmental funds, I just wanted to try and explain real quickly what the different funds are. We have 6 distinct funds: water and sewer enterprise, stormwater enterprise, and both of those, all of the revenues that come in from whatever that is, water, sewer, stormwater, all the fees that are collected for that, and all of the expenses to run those operations stay within those funds. The money doesn't go to the general fund or get moved to the general fund, it stays within those funds. And then all capital requests for those funds are covered within those funds. If they're not, for some reason, there would be a line item in the budget that says support for water sewer enterprise or for the stormwater fund to help fund whatever is needed in those. We have not had to support the water or sewer fund in a good number of years from the general fund. And the stormwater fund, we have on several occasions when they've had really large projects that we didn't have enough funding for. In some years we have budgeted for that, but because the projects didn't complete within the year, we didn't have to do operating transfers from the general fund because by the following year they had enough funding left over to cover those projects. So they're pretty self-sustaining. And then we have special revenue funds, and that's made up of a composite of a bunch of different sources of revenue, all of which have a restricted purpose. So money might be donated for trails and walkways, or it might be donated to support the fishing rodeo for the rec department, or all of our grants that are specific purpose that aren't capital are kept in special revenue funds. Wherever there's a group that has fundraising activities and they raise specific funds for that activity, and the funds can then only be expended for that activity, and they retain any monies within there that are left over from the year before. So they are generally self-sustaining. Very rarely do those funds get support from the general fund. Some of the funds that are in there is there's a crime prevention fund, which has money from fundraising. There's a police officers fund that gets funded from different, sources like the Citizen Support Group. And they all have a specific purpose. So they're isolated and maintained by themselves, and those funds do not end up in the general operating, budgets at all. Okay. And then we have the capital projects funds, which are primarily only capital projects that are other than water, sewer, or stormwater. So these would be the streets, trails, parks, sidewalks, major projects like that that are not water, sewer, or stormwater related. And a lot of those are funded with grant revenues. We've done exceedingly well with grant funding for a lot of our capital projects, but that fund is almost always supported with some general fund dollars. And that's usually a line item on the short sources and uses page of the budget that says support for capital projects. And a lot of those funds come from unassigned fund balance because those projects tend to roll over year. You know, we might say we're gonna spend $2 billion on something, but we only spend 100,000 of it this year. Well, next year we're gonna roll that remaining 1.9 over. So that money is sitting in unassigned fund balance, so that's where it comes from. And then the cemetery fund is required to be a permanent fund under generally accepted accounting principles. The point in that is that you take state law is 10%, but we currently put 100% of all sales of lots and niches go to the permanent reserve fund, called the perpetual fund. The idea being that when the cemetery is no longer selling grave sites and doing burials and that kind of thing, it still has to be maintained. Cut the grass and maintain certain elements of it. So the idea is that over time, that perpetual fund would fund the ongoing maintenance of the cemetery. We have a ways to go before we have enough money to do that at today's current interest rates, but that's the idea, and it must be kept in a separate fund. And then, of course, our biggest fund is the general fund, and this is primarily where all of our revenue sources go that aren't otherwise dedicated to something. So all of our property tax revenues, meals tax, lodging tax, sales tax, 599 funds, highway funds, there's a variety of different revenue sources that come in from the state that are fixed every year. All of those dollars go into the general fund. And then all of the programs that we operate in the town come out of the general fund for the most part, unless they've been funded by some special revenue source. So, police department, rescue, streets, not water and sewer public works, but streets public works, all administrative costs, all the parks and recreation, the aquatic center, planning, engineering, all of those departments are funded out of those general fund dollars. So, does that help a little, I hope?
Now, Larry, can you go back to the cemetery fund for 1 second?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have an account that's completely separate right now? And how much money do we have right now saved up under the cemetery loan?
I think the perpetual fund is right around $750,000, if I have to say off the top of my head.
What do you expect to be in that account before? Because right now, from my understanding, we're paying like $280,000. Obviously, it's not a money-making thing, and it will never be, but let's first say there were no more lots available today. You're still not making $80,000 a year today. Let's first say, I'm just making, let's first say they're filled out, which obviously at the way we're going, it looks like, you know, we're going to get there within probably, 10, 20 years, 30 years?
I don't know, I'm not the cemetery expert.
There are other phases that they haven't even opened up yet, closer, kind of moving towards 81 in that same area that you all reviewed the other night. So I'd be hard pressed to say how many.
You know, there's probably room for a columbarium, another columbarium or two also. You know, we have been putting revenue from the proceeds from columbarium and from the lot sales in there. It's one of those things, you know, perpetuity is a long time, obviously. So, it's, put an exact number, I guess, we could probably try to come up with some formulas, what we think that fund should be long-term.
Yeah,
And it's, but we'd also have to include what we kind of have going forward in terms of revenue from it, because we will still have continued lot sales. So I think we've got several hundred remaining potential lots.
So like right now, I live close to cemetery, so when I look at it, all the lots behind us have sold. There are people in there. Behind that, there was all these places where they were empty before, now they're filled up. My perception, because I walk there pretty much every day, that is not gonna be there obviously for a long, long time the way we're going. So I guess my concern is, how much money do you have to save and put at the side, so one day we don't have to come up with the $280,000 out of pocket, it pays for it by itself, out of that loan. So let's first say we have $1 million, $10 million, or whatever to the side, and then we have a CD or whatever you have for the town that is making some money to pay for itself. Do we have a long-term plan for the cemetery?
I can come up with some type of figures of what it would take long-term to maintain it.
Okay, that'll be it.
Just to kind of basically look at kind of our annual maintenance costs now and try to project out.
Because if we have $750,000 on the side, and it's costing $280,000 as of today, that's not gonna get us too far.
We are adding to the fund, like I said, lot sales and
Yeah, we add.
sales.
that's kind of why the support is so high, is that even though the cemetery they usually have about $60,000 in burial charges. Those go toward their operating expenses. Sales of lots, they can vary every year, from anywhere from $35,000 to $80,000. And we take 100% of that and we put it in that perpetual fund. So that continues to grow as long as we're selling lots, so that hopefully by the time we get there, in perpetuity, it will be able to generate what it would take to take care of it. Now, once you go into, you're no longer selling lots, the maintenance and the amount of personnel you have to take care of it also declines substantially, because now all you're doing is mowing the grass, maintaining fences, that kind of stuff. It becomes much less expensive to operate. Right now, it takes a lot more to operate it. You're, hiring people on a regular basis, and that takes time and personnel and money.
The personal is, from my understanding, is only two, right?
Correct. Okay.
Val, it's conceivable that eventually, no matter what we put aside, that it's going to take operating, sustainability from the operating fund or the general fund to keep it up.
Possibility, yeah.
I mean, you can save $2 million in 40 years. We still own it unless somebody buys it from us.
Mm-hmm.
You're still going to have to use general fund.
Probably, because it depends on what the investment market and interest rates are doing in any given year. It'll become vulnerable to, because you're supposed to maintain that core fund and only spend the earnings on it for long-term maintenance.
Right, so let's say we don't save the money. Say we only have $700,000.
It would have to come from the general fund,
No savings.
as it does now.
Are cemeteries things that the town has to take on if somebody else doesn't take it? For example, the other cemetery or other cemetery in town, so if nobody takes care of it, is that a responsibility of the town?
We aren't legally obligated to take them over.
Not obligated?
We're not legally obligated. Town council chose to take over the Sunset Cemetery.
2008, right?
So next week, we will deliver the first draft of the budget. It's a work of progress at the moment, and hopefully this evening we will get some direction from all of you about what we need to finish this budget and present it to you next week. Our economic outlook is not nearly as gloomy as last year, except for, outrageous inflation rates, that we're all experiencing. And, you know, that has had an impact, obviously, on our budget, and what we're doing. We've put incremental increases in for fuel costs that are rising, material costs that are rising. So there's increases in department budgets to accommodate, some of the inflation that's going on, and hopefully it will slow somewhat from what it's been lately. But the good news, part of that, is that our meal tax revenues have been trending up about 15% over last year's numbers, and 13% over the pre-COVID full year of 2019. So, we're looking pretty good. So we're looking at about a 2% increase for the 2023 budget, which we think is pretty conservative. We do have more restaurants opening, more people going out. We have more activities going on in town that people are coming into town to attend. So we think that the 2% is a modest increase. Lodging revenues are up 9% over the 2019 numbers, and we're projecting about a 2% increase in our numbers for this year. So lodging tax has recovered extremely well in the last 6 months. And these numbers might change a little bit as we get actual numbers in. That might change our projections a little bit, but I think if anything, it would change them more positively than negatively. Because I've been, especially for this current year, we've been really, really conservative with those numbers, and the numbers are coming in way higher than what we expected, so.
Can you translate that into numbers that actually make sense to me? Like, what is the amount in dollars?
Oh, for these increases, we're gonna show you that in a few minutes, okay? And then sales tax, they are projected to run about 6% over last year's numbers, for this current fiscal year. So those are holding well, and we're projecting just a 1% increase in them for next year, just because we saw such a big jump this year, and there's some other changes going on with sales tax that we wanted to be a little bit more conservative on the sales tax numbers.
Number, I guess I want to mention to you in particular is fuel. We're essentially, I guess, using 25% multiplier over last year's budget. Just kind of, I guess, hope that that's appropriate in your eyes. Who kind of knows what's happening with the gas prices the way they're going right now. That's just for our purposes, that's what we're kind of making for our assumption on fuel prices.
So these are the actual numbers for meals tax. The blue is just, it's blue, white, so you can separate the lines. So we have the 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022 numbers. When you get to the green, that's our projection for the rest of the year. So once those green numbers become actual numbers, that might change how we project those revenues. And then what's in yellow is what's projected for next year. So our forecast right now on meals tax for 2022 is to bring in about $8.2 million and almost $8.4 for 2023. So, and then that line with the percentages, that is the percentage increase for each of those months so far in 22 over 21. And then the numbers at the very bottom are the change percentages from 2019 to 2022. So you can see it's been a pretty rapid increase, but a lot of those numbers didn't fall, other than lodging, did not fall as much as we anticipated they would. We all like to eat out too much.
I think particularly for our new council members, you'll find as we go through this, they present a very conservative budget to us. We don't play games about, well, hopefully if we get this much, we can spend this much. I mean, they pretty much stick within the budget, and whatever it exceeds is gravy we go toward.
Gravy at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It ends up in unassigned fund balance that then you can spend the following year on some capital items. And the next one is the quick So this is the lodging tax, and it's laid out the same way as the meals tax, which is the contrast. The green is numbers we haven't brought in yet. That was our initial expectation in the budget numbers. You can see that they are pretty low. So we're expecting those numbers to come in a lot better than that, particularly when you look at what our increases have been over the first 6 months of this year. They've been huge compared to last year. So I think that those numbers in green are probably on the low side, and our actual will be a bit higher than what we're projecting here. And then for next year, we're just looking at a 2% increase over that. So if those green numbers turn to nice, better numbers, the yellow ones down below will turn to a little bit better numbers too. And we'll have last month's numbers in here by the end of the month. So that'll probably change in the final draft of the budget. So, and again, I've got the increase over 19 from 22 to 19, and the increase from 21 to 22. So you can see there's some pretty nice changes other than those green months. They don't look as pretty because they're low projections. And sales tax, I'm sorry, let me back that up one. So our difference is about a $40,000 increase in lodging tax between 22 and 23. Sales tax, these numbers too have been just really steady and way above our expectations even during the pandemic. The numbers were really good. So we're looking at about $150,000 increase from 22 to 23 for our forecasted numbers. You can see again the percentages I did the same way, so you can kind of mull over those. And I like to keep these by month just so that we can kind of see the difference in certain months and how they roll through the year. January and February are always pretty low numbers, but
Valerie, the food tax, is that, we get a percentage of that, right?
of which tax?
Food tax,
Meals tax?
yes.
We get all.
No, not the meal tax, but the one for the
Sales tax.
groceries.
Sales tax.
Yeah,
That's it, right?
is that the one?
Yes.
So is that any different than the one that you use for anything else besides like food items from the store that is not prepared meals, but the other tax? Is that a difference?
Where the state charges 5.3% state sales tax, 1% comes back locally, and half of that automatically goes to Montgomery County. The other half is split between us, Blacksburg, and the county based on our school-age population, and which is roughly even between us, Blacksburg, and Christiansburg. So roughly we get about 1/6 of that 1 cent.
So like the grocery store sales tax that is collected from the state, the one that the governor wants to get rid of, how much effect will that have in our budget? Are we?
It depends on what they actually adopt, because there's a provision proposed that the state would punish the portion lost by localities somehow. And I don't know whether that's gonna happen, or whether that legislation isn't necessarily gonna pass or not.
Short-term fix, they wouldn't do that every year.
They probably wouldn't.
But let's per se that passed today, will that affect our budget?
Is that why your projection is only 1% on
In part, yeah.
Sorry.
It, because we're not allowed to see exactly where what stores, where does the sales tax money come from? So we're not allowed to see that this much came from Home Depot and this much came from Food Lion. It's hard to judge that. Statewide, they're saying it's roughly 20% of the sales tax. I'm not sure if that's a valid number for our area. We do have a lot of grocery stores, but I'm not sure it's 20% of our sales tax revenue. that number is too high for this area because we have so much retail here.
My house is like probably at least half.
They did start collecting internet sales taxes included in that number then.
Internet tax.
I think that it is in large part why we held so well through the pandemic and people were buying online. We were still getting our sales tax, even though they weren't running over to the store and buying.
Have they figured out how to divvy that up, online sales, or is it still going into one big bucket?
I've tried to ask how they divvy that up, and I haven't really been able to find out. I would assume they use zip codes.
They would have to, I don't know any other way, which,
I would guess we would
Yeah.
get 24073 and 24068.
Would they
Plus they-
just take any zip code in our county and apply it to the county
Well,
multiplier?
actually, I guess that's really true. So I guess anything, and that would all come back to Montgomery County, and it does really all go to the same bucket anyhow, which would be us. County gets roughly 2/3 of that. Like I say, us in Blacksburg get about a sixth each.
Previous years of COVID, I can't remember, what did we project? Was it definitely over 1%?
for increases in sales tax, yeah, it's usually 2 to 3%.
Okay.
So I just kept it at 1% because I do still foresee that happening. And that way, if bad legislation comes down the pipe, we can adjust.
So their subsidy,
Which everybody's caution is, don't let it be like the car tax. Because, that first year they were supposed to make the town whole, we got $228,250. We've been getting that same $228,250 for the last 12 years.
A car sale?
This is from a governor's mandate, I guess,
Yeah.
several years ago. Governor
Yeah.
Gilmore.
under Gilmore.
So, there is a proposed increase for water in the budget. This was postponed from 2022. It's $1 on the first 1,000 gallons of water. But that's it. The gallons after that are already at their rate. That was the increase we picked up last year. So this amounts to about $130,000 a year. Not a ton of money. There are no other proposed fee increases. Right now, our unassigned fund balance is strong going into the budget cycle, so feel pretty good about what we may be able to accomplish this year. And so far in the draft, we've finally gotten it there. All of the funds, except for the cemetery, have operating net revenues in excess of expenditures, with funds going toward capital expenditures. I think, ready to move on to capital projects.
What happens if we don't do the, water increase this year? You're really saying that we're making pretty good amount of money from the sales tax, from the food meal tax.
Water and sewer fund is separate entity
Nothing
from
to do with,
the other.
that's right.
But we can use it from the general fund. So we
could
can always,
subsidize
We could
those
subsidize.
funds
Yeah.
through other taxes.
If we want to.
if
The
town
enterprise
council
fund
wanted
is
to.
Presented basically to break even.
Well, it's to break even and to be able to afford, debt for capital and renewal of infrastructure and funding that going forward, which it's been doing the last couple of years. And, there's some really big projects coming up there that are probably going to have to be done with debt. They're not gonna get done out of future money that we're gonna collect. The future money will have to pay the debt down.
Have we gotten the loan for the $9 million, now that we're talking about loans?
For the park? Oh, yeah, we got that.
When's the authority supposed, or Randy supposed to finish their project?
About 2 years and a half.
Trying to think. Mike, do you know?
Yeah.
They've been, I mean, it's under construction now,
Yeah.
so I would think probably about
Wayne said something to me about it the other day, but I don't remember.
What
And,
is that
and the
about?
water rates are going up 2% every year for the next 5 years
Right.
From the authority.
from the authority.
So they can pay them.
How much did they borrow? 30 million?
I know that project came in a whole lot more expensive than
36.
the original plan.
What is that increase for us for 1,000 gallons? Is it still it was $3.60, right?
We're, I think it's $4.02 this year
$4.02 for
Per-
1,000 gallons.
per 1,000 gallons. We're approaching half. The difference between the per 1,000 that we pay the water authority and what we keep is what pays for our staff to maintain all the water lines and,
yes, it's
Keep
more than
things
just a
going,
water
so-
rate from the authority, because we
Yeah.
have water tanks, pump stations, generators, water lines.
yep. So that's what that incremental difference is supposed to be for. So as that rate from the water authority goes up, it eventually just kind of creeps up into those funds that you need to have available for us to operate.
The real estate tax, where does it go? Does it go into the general funds, right?
General fund.
And general funds, and technically, when we pay for real estate tax, it should be to be taken care of our infrastructure as well. Therefore, general funds are right along to be used as well for water lines and things like that. We wanted to, in town council, made the agreement to use some of the money from general funds.
Depends on how you view enterprise funds, whether you should subsidize on the general fund or not. I think that's kind of an opinion question.
We're in a problem for years, where we were supporting that
From-
enterprise fund over $1 million a year.
From a management perspective, you'd probably prefer not to subsidize it with your general fund.
All right, Justin.
So, I'm going through the projects that are being proposed, only in the FY '23 budget. These are the numbers, that you'll see. There may be some differences as Val and I tweak numbers over the next week or so. So, her copy is the official copy. I'll just put that out there.
Not done yet.
So there may be tweaks along the way, but I wanted to put some numbers out there just so y'all are aware of where we're at on things. And also, just note that that's only for the FY '23 budget. So a lot of these are multi-year, either in the past or in the future. So the numbers that we've spent or will spend in future years are not shown in this presentation. I want to go into each of these with a little bit more detail, but I'd just like to have all these on a summary slide as far as this is for our transportation discipline. So we have a group of completing projects that we expect to complete in 2023, ongoing and projects that are moving into the next phases, and as well as new proposed projects. And I'm going to go ahead and mention this one because I don't have a separate slide for it. This is primary extension paving. This is from Roanoke Street, from East Main to Depot Street, arguably the worst section of road in town. And so we have applied for funding on that from VDOT for state of good repair. That we expect to be awarded, but we have not heard anything from that yet. That is 100% funding. What will happen and needs to happen is our water line project has to be completed through that section before we pave it. So that's why that was the delay in getting here. For stormwater, there's a handful of projects that we have completing: Industrial Park Stormwater Basin, and then we have ongoing projects, the College Street Drainage Project, Hitchcock Street Stormwater, pond evaluation analyses. We've got some miscellaneous culvert replacements, and then we have a new resiliency study that we received a grant for that we're proposing in FY '23. And then lastly, our water and sewer projects. A lot of these we're planning to finish up this fiscal year, and then we also have some that are moving into subsequent phases as well. and I apologize, I know the 3 new members, I didn't click that y'all may not have seen some of this, so if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me on something that, we're working on finishing up. So, on the right side, I have funding source, and, this may look a little bit weird when you start looking at the total, but just for reference, for these projects in particular, if we have funding sources, that's shown as a negative in the parentheses. Total expenditure amount is kind of the fund source it's coming out of, and that's the general here, and the total number here is the delta. So that's the actual contribution the town has to make in completing that project. So for instance, the expenditures we expect in 2023, $236,000. I expect to get $14,745 from the state, which means our net to finish that project is $221. So these 3 projects, Roanoke Street and Tower Road, Hampton Boulevard intersection, I think most people are familiar with that. It's been pretty noticeable in that side of town. It includes sidewalks, curb and gutter, some street lighting, and a traffic signal with pedestrian accommodations at that intersection. The Arbor Drive, Peppers Ferry Road intersection, if you travel through there, you've noticed a lot more cones and barrels recently. Similar type project there. The difference is we're adding a left turn lane on Arbor Drive from the State Electric side, so that'll help get cars in the correct lane and make that signal more efficient. And also we're providing pedestrian accommodations to help pedestrians cross both Arbor Drive and Peppers Ferry Road. Last project here that we plan to complete next year is the Roanoke Street Sidewalk extension at the 460 bypass. So this is out near Tractor Supply. It picks up from our Falling Branch intersection project that was completed a couple years ago, extends under the bypass bridges, and terminates at Hubble Drive. Some ongoing and next phases projects is annual paving. We generally try to target 1.1 million each year for annual paving of town streets, and the goal is to increase that a little bit each year to match with inflation. So this year it's 1.1 million. Also, Cambria Trail is a project that we had applied for revenue sharing in years past, and we had been selected for that project, but when the state decided to kind of pause all the awards for that funding, we paused this project as well. We expect to have that agreement in place in the fall to begin engineering phases. The construction will follow in future years. Just quick background on this trail, it's intended to pick up at Mill Lane where our Depot Park Trail extension terminated. We have a new crosswalk across Mill Lane with the flashing yellow lights there. It would pick up on the north side of Mill Lane, maneuver through our property along the railroad, and work its way down Depot Street to the square at Depot and Cambria, that intersection.
Can you explain that one to me again? Where is that at again?
So the Aquatic Center,
Mm-hmm.
Mill Lane, we just put a crosswalk in across Mill Lane with the Depot Park Trail project. We'll start at that terminus and move around through the property the town owns. It was originally slated for the passenger rail station. But it would work around that property and come out on Depot Street further down the road and go down to the square.
Cars?
Different direction. So going to square at Depot and Cambria, where the old train station's at.
Pull up closer to the railroad
Okay,
tracks.
got it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Got it.
Some other projects that we have ongoing is the North Franklin Street and Ways Lane pedestrian improvements. That was awarded TA funds. This is just the engineering funds currently appropriated for it. We expect construction to follow in FY24. This adds pedestrian signals to the existing intersection along with an additional crosswalk. And the other project I consider a sister project to this one is the South Franklin Street and First Street pedestrian improvements. Much the same goal and scope on that one. One project that is kind of continuing, but also it's a new big expenditure is the North Franklin Bridge Deck Rehab. We had a consultant do, some testing on the bridge, and they found high chloride levels in the concrete as you move down through the profile of the bridge deck. And chloride is bad for concrete and steel, so they recommended us remove part of the top of the bridge deck and then put back concrete that's low permeability with all the new additives that they have now in 2020 versus in, you know, the 70s or whenever that bridge was built. So we have money in the FY22 budget to design it, and this is proposed $2.35 million in the 23 budget to actually do the work. The last.
Who's the bridge by Dairy Queen? I'm sorry.
Yes, the big one. The overflow parking at the aquatic center, we have some money in there to try to finish that one out. It needs to have some curb and gutter, some stormwater improvements, paving, such like, and other things like that, to finish up that parking area. Also, we have the Roanoke Street primary extension route, and I apologize, there's 3 different primary extension routes on Roanoke Street. It's actually more that we've done in the past, but the 3 main segments, in order of how we plan to pave them, is the first one coming this spring is from Depot Street, 460 interchange. So that's in front of AutoZone, Dudes Drive-In, Tractor Supply. This second part here is from the 460 interchange down to Tower Road, so the Sheila Motor Mile area. That's mostly funded with VDOT funds. And then the third one that I discussed earlier is that other section from East Main to Depot Street. And again, it's pretty much 100% funded from VDOT. The park, I think everyone's familiar with that. That's ongoing construction. And then trail lighting is one that we added into the budget, I think probably the fall before last. And so this is rolling some money forward just because we haven't been able to focus too much on this one. But there is a goal to put some lighting at Depot Park Trail, Downtown Park, and the Renville Knolls Bridge.
So right there under the Truman Wilson property, you are expecting that we are going to get the money, we're gonna sell the land this year?
I'm gonna defer that to Val and Randy.
Yeah, that is what will remain of the reserve that we had, the loan funds, and then would include the sale of some real estate and grant funding for this upcoming year.
So we have it on the budget, so that means that we are going to sell those pieces of land this year?
Up to $4,350,000 of that is a recreational access grant, and we had included $4 million between the land sales and donations. Correct. And that's,
So it is under this budget?
well, not the this is current year, but yes, the
Yeah,
proposed budget,
2023,
correct.
3 months.
You projected it.
So that means that the chances are we already are making the decision that we are possibly not going to keep some of the land for a possible fire station or something like that?
Well, to be honest, I think that's a conservative estimate of what I think you could get for all 3 of those lots. I think you could probably get, we were assuming approximately $1 million in donations, which I think is conservative, and $3 million for the 2 lots over on the eastern side. Those are 2.5 acres lot each lot.
So has there been discussion between you two about using one of those lots for a fire station? Because I don't think council.
Well, that would be a council discussion. And, I've mentioned the possibility of land banking it, and I don't think there's necessarily an immediate plan for a station there, just the possibility of land banking it. Although we are looking at the possibility of emergency services stations. That location hasn't been determined, I guess, officially.
Giving the property back to the Haberstats?
No, we still own the lot, where actually the pump station's located.
2/3 of the lot we had before, is that about right, Billy?
For stormwater projects, this is, ones we expect to finish up in this coming fiscal year, is the industrial park stormwater management basin improvements. We, slowed things down a little bit last year and applied for SLAP funding, and were successful in that, so we were able to secure an extra, almost $300,000 from the state and SLAP money for that project, which also includes, stream restoration for the upstream channel going into the pond.
And just real quick, that stands for stormwater.
Oh, yeah, sorry, the Stormwater Local Assistance Fund, is what SLAP stands for. It's a 50-50 match from DEQ.
This is completely different than the other things that we were talking about the other day for the industrial, $300,000 that we,
This is in the Christiansburg Industrial Park.
and the other one is on Fallen Branch, isn't it? No.
And then some ongoing next phases, the College Street drainage improvements. There is $200,000 in this year's budget for the 30% design and easement acquisition being initiated. The remaining ARPA funds that are available, that's a fair, correct statement, okay, is, $2.49 million. So that's not, you know, the drop dead price for that project. That's just a placeholder for what ARPA funds are available.
Mm-hmm.
Hickok Street, I think most of you are familiar with that. We're relocating a storm drain on that project. And then there are various stormwater ponds that the town owns and maintains throughout the town. And so periodically we have to do assessments on those, make sure that our accounting is correct on the capacity and that the berms and the embankments are in good working order to ensure that those are going to stay placed. And then we also have some miscellaneous culvert replacement locations that we've identified, and we intend to finish that up in the fall as well.
So you expect it to only take 3 months?
For,
Well, you're saying that you're gonna start in summer 2022, which is this year, and you're saying that it's gonna be finished by the fall.
I was mentioning the culvert replacements, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Hickok Street project is probably going to be 6 to 8 months at least, perhaps longer.
One thing I want to mention in regards to the College Street drainage, of course, you notice we've got the 30% design, and in the current fiscal year budget, we've got the $200,000 that council had approved at the last budget. We didn't, I guess, have a firm commitment to the full project. We will bring that back to you once we have easement acquisition. Basically, what council told us was to proceed with the 30% design and easement acquisition. At that point, we will bring it back to you for your consideration. But budget-wise, it's eligible to be funded through ARPA, so you wouldn't need a budget amendment as long as it's funded through ARPA.
But we're going to pursue those state ones, right?
Well, that's part of the reason we'll bring that decision back to town council.
Instead of using all the ARPA funds just for that?
Like I say, I do plan on bringing that decision. Once we are further along in the easement acquisition, I'll bring that discussion back to town council.
The last item for Stormwater Enterprise Fund is the new proposed that we have in FY23, and this is the resiliency study. This is a grant we received from the Community Flood Protection Fund to perform that townwide study. This opens options for future funding from that fund with the projects identified in the study. And it's almost a 90-10 match.
Is, Randy, when going back to the number for the money that we're gonna be spending on doing some repairs on industrial park area, is that not something that the county can help with some monetary?
Request anything you'd like to request from the county.
This is our industrial park,
This isn't.
off of Roanoke Street. This is not the corporate park.
Or near Batak Soul Shack.
This is not the one behind there?
This is the one behind there, but we own this one, or we maintain this one. This isn't Falling Branch, that's
But
behind
it's
Falling
still
Branch.
part of the county.
but it's in town.
And
It's
he's
not part
paying,
of the, it's not part of the, well, we're all part of the county.
yeah, we're paying real
So-
estate taxes for all this stuff too, just like they're asking for us to be able to
But
pay.
you know, there's a difference between the Falling Branch Industrial Park
What's the difference?
and this, they're not in the same place.
I know they're different places.
Christiansburg Industrial Park was originally developed by private developers who were, I guess I kind of describe them as friendly towards the town.
Mhm.
And they did it with the idea of basically helping the town with industrial recruitment. So they began developing it as a private development, and they sold lots, to basically, people who would be interested for industrial purposes, and they tried to sell them at cost. The town wound up taking over that industrial park, and we wound up expanding it. But the Christiansburg Industrial Park was essentially developed by private developers and taken over by the town. Whereas Falling Branch Corporate Park was developed by Montgomery County.
But Montgomery County makes money when they sell the lots. And
They
Montgomery
do.
County still collects real estate taxes, so I don't see the difference here.
On to the water and sewer enterprise, these are completing projects for FY '23. It's a Buffalo tank replacement, the Edgewood pump station, and the Roanoke Street water line replacement. Buffalo tank, we're gonna put a new tank beside the old one, eventually tear the old one down. It's pretty rough looking, if you've seen that one recently. Edgewood pump station is replacing some old equipment that is beyond its service life. And of course, the Roanoke Street water line replacement, that's the one out here from East Main to Depot. That's replacing that aging 8-inch water line with a 12-inch water line. We actually have that one out to bid currently.
In regards to the Buffalo tank, we've mentioned the possibility of doing some type of, either a Christiansburg symbol or writing Christiansburg on the side, or putting a C, maybe just writing Christiansburg on the tank.
The tank itself,
Yes.
and where is this one at?
This is the Buffalo tank?
That's middle school.
Yes.
Just above the middle school.
How high is that?
The ground tank, so it's only 40 foot off the ground. Not elevated like the one over at Hubble is. It would be visible from the interstate and Park Raider, I think. I think you should see it from Park Raider, right? Yeah.
Yes. I think the interstate visibility is the reason as much as anything. If we are going to pursue that, we'll bring that back to town council.
And then some ongoing and next phases projects. The first one is the sewer lift station upgrades. When we did the lift station PER this past fiscal year, we identified all the improvements that kind of needed to happen to the lift stations in the future. And so we've identified the top priorities one of the top priorities is the Walters lift station. And so this would fund the engineering for that, the design for that, and then the construction would come in future years. One of the other big priorities that was in the lift station PER was eliminating the Silver Lake pump station. And so we have currently proposed the second phase of the Silver Lake Interceptor project. And so this would connect at the first phase that we finished up, down near where the Meadows Golf Course was, and extend that up to the Silver Lake pump station near the intersection of Silver Lake and Bradford Street. And it also accomplishes some other goals, but just wanted to make sure that we think the project amount right now is about $2.35 million. The cost of plastic is exceptionally volatile right now. So we really just don't know where that's going to be, but we have a portion of that funded in this fiscal year, knowing that if we started it in the spring, summer of next year, it would go into the FY24 fiscal year as well.
Is that why the water has lost so much of its force within the last month? Because the water, I mean, we are having a problem getting water in our house, like it's barely.
This is for sewer.
That's for sewer, okay? Now, can you go,
If you're having a water pressure.
I'm still thinking about the,
Engineers can come out and test water flow at your meter.
We have contacted and they haven't given us an answer. I gotta double check with that again.
So is there an ongoing problem throughout town, water pressure? No.
I'm not getting any complaints.
Your husband called, I returned his phone call, and I haven't heard back from him.
Okay. We're having a problem, so.
Okay,
On
yeah, feel free
Buffalo,
to reach out.
on Buffalo Tank, you guys were mentioning about having a sea painting and whatever. What about, can that qualify for an art mural grant or something like that, to have a mural on that tank? From the money that you have from the art fund?
Are you talking, I guess, the art fund that was donated to the
Yes.
town?
Yes.
I think it kind of depends on whether you consider that an art exhibit or not, I guess.
If you were going to do a mural, wouldn't it be?
If it were something like a mural, I would say it would be. I would think probably just simply lettering that said Christiansburg, probably not. But
I think at this point, the cosmetic look of it is irrelevant. I think we know what the cost is gonna be if we decide to decorate it. Down the road, you can come to us, but whether we put a C, a B, or a G on it, it doesn't matter at this point.
More than likely, we would bid that as an additive, so we would know how much it would cost to include that. We would not be able to allow an artist to do a mural on the tank because it requires special paint for the coatings, if it's a steel tank, or if it's a concrete tank. I think that would be problematic to use non-special paint that's designated for that purpose. I'm not familiar with it, to be honest. I've never done it.
I see tank paint.
That's what town
Yeah,
council
that's-
does.
Yeah, we'll decide
at a
that
later
later.
date.
That's-
And I think they usually do wraps now, don't they?
the way they built the fallen branch tank is panels, basically curved panels that were glass lined, and they bolted them together on site in a circle, and they jacked them up, is what they did.
Decorating it is the least of my worries right now.
Yeah.
Well, you guys were talking about G's and decorations, so I was just jumping in with that comment, so.
Lastly, I wanted to just share some future capital projects under consideration. I would see these happening in the next 5 or so years. We do have some funding that we expect to receive from a few projects, one being the Depot Street North Franklin intersection project. That's a smart scale that has been selected. Also, the North Franklin Street Sidewalk project from Elm to Mill Lane, that has been selected for funding on revenue sharing. We do intend to apply for additional projects this coming smart scale cycle for the Booker T. Washington Parkway extension. I don't have a good number on that. When we did the application last time, we included a lot of the, VDOT required a lot of the items that would be built with the park to be included in the application, with it not being in place at the time of the application. So that's changed drastically since then. The Parkway Drive extension, that would be applied for this coming cycle. Also, we just recently applied for bridge replacement of the Depot Street Bridge. This is the one over near Haynes Well Drilling, near Roanoke Street. That is state of good repair, so that would be 100% funded if selected. And then we've also applied for other revenue sharing projects in the past cycle with various sidewalk infill projects, Stafford Drive intersection signal, and New Village Drive intersection signal. With the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, Stone Street culvert replacement, this is the one kind of behind Kroger near Depot Park that we would look to replace. And then there's also from the Downtown Watershed Study project, the next highest priority was the Chrisman and Flieger drainage improvements. And those numbers were a little bit too old for me to really comfortably put on here, knowing just where we're at with things in the economy and such. Other projects include in the water and the sewer is the East End redundancy project. That one would provide a redundant feed to the east end of town. Also, we'll be looking to prepare a PER, a preliminary engineering report, to look at the town's water infrastructure as a whole and help us direct priorities to address the aging infrastructure and do systematic replacements. And then lastly, for sewer, the Arrowhead sewer shed rehabilitation and replacement project. That's gonna be a pretty pricey project when that comes along. And then also, just from the lift station, PR that we had done, that the Tower Road, Starlight, Edgewood pump stations are the next ones on the priority list. Just to note, this Edgewood is the sewer lift station. There was a separate Edgewood in the water, that we have a separate water booster station at that same location. So this is the sewer lift station, not the water booster station.
There's a Booker T. Washington Parkway. What is the TBD again stand for?
To be determined.
Do you have, I know that is to be determined, but do you have kind of like a rough numbers?
When we applied for it last time, it was $29 million. I don't think it'll be that much this time around, but
Having the signal and having part of the road constructed into the park will help bring the cost down a little bit.
the stormwater infrastructure's in place now and things like that. But to be honest, the bidding environment right now is insane.
That is a smart scale project, which is large, basically almost 100% VDOT funding is what we're applying for. It's a very expensive project, obviously, though.
All these projects, there is not like a time frame when they will be, what are the chances of us getting them like in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or?
Well, if you're
how does that work?
selected for a smart scale project, you're kind of at VDOT's mercy as to when they schedule you. They put you in the 6-year plan, and typically they put you towards the end of the 6-year plan, but that depends on what type of funding they have a little bit and kind of how high they prioritize the project. In general, as far as the other projects, we're probably looking at the 5-year window for most of these.
Any VDOT funded project normally takes at least 5 years from when we apply for funding. So the Tower Road and Arbor Drive, we applied for funding for those projects in November of 2017. The development of the project takes a lot longer. And with that, Don, obviously I'll answer questions first if we have anything, but Don is going to come and give a presentation on the wastewater plant.
This PowerPoint under the town council, stuff that we have the folders now.
I can save it under there.
Yeah. Thanks.
Just make time like the old, yeah.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Don Cole. I work in the engineering department doing capital projects, but formerly I worked for Jim Lanchines down in Public Works, taking care of water and wastewater. So this is a presentation on the wastewater treatment facility and the PERs associated with it. Picture of our facility. A little bit of history. The current wastewater treatment facility was constructed between 1978 and 1980 to treat 2 million gallons of wastewater per day. And then it was upgraded in 1999 and 2000 to treat 4 million gallons per day. And it was upgraded again in 2006 and 2007 to treat 6 million gallons per day, which is where it's at right now. And then along the way, there have been equipment changes to account for regulation and to account for age of equipment. We switched over to a UV system instead of chlorine disinfectant in 1999 and 2000, and then we had to replace that UV equipment again in 2020. We currently have no active construction projects right now. In the past 3 years, we have done a couple of things related to planning for the future. Early on, we identified that what we do with our biosolids was becoming a problem. So we identified that as our priority project, and we did a preliminary engineering report to back this up. And then from that, we designed a shovel-ready project to take care of the issues, which I'll talk about in a couple slides here now. And we also, in 2020 to 2021, we did a PER for the wastewater treatment facility as a whole. Along the way, doing that, we discovered there were some electrical issues, so we did an arc flash study. That is currently ongoing. So with respect to the Biosolids preliminary engineering report, what the report found was we had obsolete and unsafe equipment. We were having issues disposing of the Biosolids product, because as you may or may not know, the biosolids that we produce right now are land applied in an agricultural setting, which puts us at the mercy of whether or not the weather is cooperating with us and we can spread the material on the field. The agronomic uptake of the minerals that we're spreading on the field in those biosolids, and whether or not the farmer or rancher wants the material in the first place.
There's permitting processes and, just finding landowners who are willing to accept it is a little bit of a struggle.
And that's true, Randy. We have to maintain those fields from a perspective of soil analysis and permitting. So there's additional expenses for our personnel and additional permitting required with the state. We've also noticed that over the years, the operating costs have steadily increased. This most recent year, the cost to spread the biosolids was over $230,000 just in spreading the biosolids. So out of that, we went out and we started looking at what's everybody else doing with biosolids. And the consensus seems to be this centrifuge. So what we designed was a project to replace the existing gravity belt thickener with a rotary drum thickener, and then a centrifuge that will reduce the amount of liquids in the biosolids and allow us to dispose of the biosolids at a landfill instead of putting it on top of the agricultural property. By disposing of it in a landfill, we're not at the mercy of the agricultural industry, and we can take it to the landfill just about any type of weather.
You still have to get permits for that?
Yes, we do. And the biggest part of the permit for disposing of it at a landfill is running a bioassay or a sample of what all is in it, and then will it pass the paint filter test at the landfill. Currently, the product that we have designed will work as top cover at the landfill, which is something that the landfill needs anyway. It also improves employee safety. One of the issues we have right now with the GBT, I'm sure some of you guys have been down there on a tour, is when they're running that GBT, it's a really heavy ammonia smell, which is sickening to the employees. And with this new centrifuge, the ventilation is all taken care of. As a matter of fact, that's a picture, the centrifuge is the middle picture of the Strubles Creek centrifuge. And at their operation, they have a microwave and a coffee pot right next to the centrifuge. So that tells you how clean that is. We also looked at what we could do as far as saving costs, and right now, our average operating cost with the GBT and the spreading is about $253,000 per year. Installing the centrifuge in the rotary drum thickener will reduce our annual operating cost to about $102,000 per year. The estimated construction cost of the biosolids project in 2020 dollars is $3.8 million. This project is 95% complete, design, or shovel ready. In the next fiscal cycle, if we'd like to. Next, please. So once we got going with the biosolids, then we went into a preliminary engineering report for the plant. The idea was to identify everything that needed to be fixed within the next 20 years at the plant. And to provide a roadmap and a decision tool for you guys to make, really good decisions for how we proceed with the wastewater treatment facility. And just like we did with this one, we picked up the old capital improvement plan from 2017 and just renewed it. So we should probably renew it in another 3 to 5 years. So what the PER did was it broke, here's an aerial view of the plant again, and it broke it into 10 system areas. And that's just to make it easier for the engineers to look at each area in detail and map out what needed to be done. It evaluated the need for improvement based on upcoming EPA regulations, like the PFAS that you guys have heard about, potential community growth, increased wet weather flow from I&I, bag collection systems, current equipment age and condition, and of course employee safety and ergonomics. Then what it did was it prioritized those needs over a 0 to 5, 5 to 10, and a 10 to 20 year time span. So what you're looking at right here is and this is taken from the executive summary for the 0 to 5 time span. First 5 years, it looks like we need to replace. Now it says on there $14.7 million worth of work, but I'll draw your attention to the bottom 3 lines. In the bottom 3 lines, it also includes the cost of the Biosolids upgrade that I just talked to you about, Silver Lake Interceptor that Justin talked to you about, and the sewer lift station that I believe Justin also talked to you about. So really, we can take...
You're about 10 million.
Right. Thereabouts.
Over 5 years.
Yes.
Those are still coming out of the budget, so in reality, it's still, what, 15 million, right? Because we're talking about that money was already put into the budget for this year, that's, proposed, charge, wasn't it?
So ideally, your revenues would be such that you can pay for these capital expenses. But it's not always that way. You would potentially take these projects and stagger them out over the next 5 years.
However, the centrifuge is the most pressing thing we need more than, if you rank ordered what's on there, centrifuge is one and then go down from there, is that correct?
That's correct. Centrifuge is the lowest hanging fruit. That's going to give us the biggest bang for our dollar. In addition to it, engineering and the PER determined that along the way, while you're trying to fix all of these things, other things are going to break. You're going to have to do capital replacement of those pumps and motors and whatever that you don't know, the unknown unknowns. Well, actually, they're known unknowns. We should be setting aside an additional $174,000 a year capital replacement of things that are not on that list.
We did that last year, didn't we? Or you guys did that. I think, haven't that been kind of a standard, setting the 174 aside, or is this something we're being asked to do?
We don't necessarily put that into the wastewater treatment reserve every year. We put, I guess, kind of different amounts depending on, and really that, we operate that as an enterprise fund, so.
Is the motor, really fixed at the facility, or is that one still getting fixed? The motor with that has the wheel thing or whatever, the one that when we went over there the other day, there is 2 of them.
The screw pump,
Yes.
Oh, I don't think that's fixed yet, is it?
Not touching that.
Is that replacing one of those? Do you have any of the codes involved in there to replace one of those already?
Yes.
Because that's not the Biosolids thing, that's another piece, right?
If you look at the top line,
Hard to see.
I'm sorry. I try to get it all in there.
Oh, okay,
But
the
if
screw
it-
pump.
Yeah, it's, so what that would involve pump renewals two at 1.746. What that would involve is the screw pumps would come out, what you guys saw. The screw pumps would come out completely. They would have to resurface the channels that the screws ride in. You would get, new gear all the way from the bearings at the bottom of the pit, all the way up through the screw pump and into the building. Did you guys get a chance to go in the building?
Yeah.
The gearboxes, motor, and then all of the, electrical controls that are in there would all be replaced.
Okay.
That's what that would involve.
So is that under the first year? Yeah, system area one, right? No, that's separation, how
No,
you
not
have it
really.
separated. So
No.
those are not under this budget.
And I'll show you when I get to a couple of other slides. There's a couple of things that really should take a priority over that. But it is on the 0 to 5. Oh, if you could go to the next slide, please. So in the 5 to 10, to address the increasing, climate irregularity, we've added, a new wet weather pump, which will help us during the flood conditions like we had in 2019, 2020. A secondary clarifier would also help with that, to give us some additional, buffer or, surge suppression when we get these heavy, flows. The primary clarifier, all of that gear in the primary clarifiers are worn out, so that we push that out to 5 to 10. Aeration blowers are the biggest single electrical expense at the wastewater treatment facility. So we chose the 5 to 10 time frame to start becoming more efficient and trying to reduce that electric bill. This is an aside, but the electric bill for the wastewater treatment facility ranges between $14,000 and $19,000 per month. So any sort of reduction that we can do is beneficial. We would be replacing one of the secondary clarifiers gear and replacing effluent pumps in the pump station that pumps to the river.
Are they,
A couple of other things.
sewer plants or the waste facility plants, are they eligible for any grants or anything like that through the state? Since obviously, like, for example, people got all kinds of breaks for water and other items, even electricity. Is there anything that we could apply for?
Probably kind of slim pickings generally for water and sewer grants, and to be eligible for them, usually you're probably gonna be in bad financial situations if you are. You probably would have to be considered fiscally distressed. You might even have to be under a consent order from DEQ would probably help with the application like that. But I can't think of any direct programs that we would necessarily be eligible for water and sewer funds.
I think our median household income for the town eliminates the town for a lot of those grants. Because I think some of that's based on the cost of services compared to the median household income, and ours is relatively low compared to average income.
Use the Harper grants on that, on any of this?
ARPA? Yes, wastewater, yes, you could, water or sewer systems, you could.
The landfill.
We're using the majority of it on College Street, right?
Well, that's where we're essentially dedicating that fund. Like I say, we'll bring it back to council for final decision once we're further along on easement acquisitions.
We've got 2 years to make that. A lot of these should be, if we plan to do it, we should include it immediately, almost. You guys figure out College Street, right?
Yeah, I mean, there may be some funding in the Build Back Better, but even that, there's just nothing out there that's telling us how or if we can apply or if we'll be eligible for those funds. It's just not really available just yet.
What about the grants for the solar panel stuff for the municipalities? I mean, we have a whole bunch of landfills that can possibly be used for this.
We have one landfill ourselves, the Solid Waste Authority has a landfill. I've actually kind of looked a little bit at our landfill, and the Solid Waste Authority is looking at their landfill for possibility. I do think theirs is a little better suited just because of the slope and the orientation of the property. You know, I guess our landfill is, on Wade's Lane, but it is sloped north. And that's not the best terrain to try to put in solar panels.
So have we got the people over there to investigate and tell us and everything? Because supposedly from the state, this was free to the towns. And then they will be able to provide those services and then possibly even an income for us with any access, electricity that we gain from it.
If there's free money, I'd be glad to get it.
What's the program called?
Send Randy the information for the guy. Do you ever contact him?
I don't think I have, to be honest. I'll try to reach out to him. Like I say, I'm on that, I guess, landfill committee with the solar, looking at the solid waste authority. We're still working on that, and they're still meeting. I will, I guess, reach out to them in regards to potential. Like I say, I don't think our property really lends itself to it, though. At least our landfill property.
We were looking into it.
Get a yes or no?
Next slide, please. And then the 10 to 20. So, as you can see on the 10 to 20, we've pushed out really big projects that may or may not add value to the operation. And the concept was if you revisit this every 3 to 5 years, projects will either stay on, move off, or we'll pick up additional projects from things that break as we move along. Slide, please. So, Counselor, this goes to your question about doing the screw pumps first. Where we're ready to be right now is we have a shovel-ready project with the Biosolids. It's currently valued at $3.8 million. We're ready to build that. Funded. With respect to budgeting, we're ready to design and build a potable water line to the treatment plant, because right now they have that well, and it's not drinking water quality. They do not, the chemical showers, they're using water packs. There is no sprinkler system down there. If we had potable water, we could provide a sprinkler system for all future designs and provide safe personnel showers, chemical showers, at all of the places they need to be. We need to do that. And then, as we're looking at these projects like the screw pumps and the boiler and the biosolids and all of these other things, we learned that every one of them touches on electrical. So we need to go ahead and do the upgrade work to the electrical building as a foundation for all of the projects that we're going to end up doing over the next 10 to 20 years. Then, we've got some concrete that needs to be repaired. The plant was built initially 1978 to 1980. The service life of concrete in this type of an environment is usually designed for like 50 years. We're almost at 50 years. So we need to take this time now to fix that concrete, fix those cracks, and start looking at what else needs to be done to,
It says that a lot of this started and prices were gathered from 2020, correct?
That's correct.
Do you foresee that going to be like another $500,000 if we were going to start this project this summer? And can you find the equipment? And can you find the equipment? Because the screws, is that a problem that your guys are having a problem finding?
So equipment like the screw pumps are specialty equipment. When we did the UV upgrade, we, knew exactly what piece of equipment we wanted to order, and it was a newer version of what we had originally put in 2000. And because we specified that piece of equipment, it was from Canada. We had nearly a half a year lead time to get that equipment in 2019. Works now. So if there was a 6-month lead time on those screw pumps or those screws, you can bet it's gonna be even longer. I think most of that equipment is German. Maybe, shipped from Germany.
So let me ask you something else. What happens if the other screw goes bad today?
Operationally, we have the wet weather pump station, which is down on the ground beside the screw pumps. Those 3 pumps are capable, or 2 pumps are capable of pumping everything up to something like a 10 million gallon per day flow. And there was a situation that we had within the past 2 years where an electrical situation, I think it was, couldn't use those screw pumps, so we rented a pump. Trailer-mounted 10-inch pump from minefields in West Virginia, and we ran it for a week. Backup plan.
The electrical problem you mentioned, was this electrical project at 490 solve that?
We've already fixed that issue.
So this is with the ARPA money, for projecting for College Street, how much are we getting?
3.15 is what we're getting total. Spent a portion of that on salary for, public works and emergency services responders. That leaves, the amount that was stated earlier,
Right.
2.5.
2.7, I think, huh?
That leaves 2.4.
Correct, minus the 200,000 we're spending towards, College Street. Correct.
2.2.
Well,
I mean,
I
this
think
is
that's
just
2.5
a
included.
suggestion for budget. Why don't we do the design and build for the water, design, electrical project, and we're in this year's budget with ARPA.
You're talking for yourself. We're not talking, we got to make that decision together.
I understand that, but Randy's preparing the budget, and you guys can chime in, but.
If you would want to simply change an allocation, that is fine and acceptable.
The 2.2 that you're using, that's available, right, or is that not available?
The ARPA money,
ARPA, yeah.
it is available.
Okay. So what do you need from council?
Would it be available for these other projects? Yes, it could be.
Okay.
You would rather us spend it on those other projects and have general funds assigned to College Street for a later decision, that's fine too. If you'd rather us directly spend money.
How much do we have available if we use the ARPA funds?
2.5.
I think it's 2.7,
We have available, unassigned,
yeah,
after College Street.
no,
200,000 of it's College Street.
right now, yeah,
But if we use it all for College Street, what's it pay?
nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
But we are still planning on getting money for grants.
If that's council's direction, like I say, what we were,
That you're gonna bring it.
what I was planning on doing is, once we are further along with the 30% design and the easement acquisition, I was planning on bringing that back to council for discussion. Whether you'd still want to pursue it using ARPA, or whether you would want to wait to use, to apply for grants.
Well, I think the possibility of catastrophic incidents down here is, you know, the wastewater treatment and all is probably more important at this point than holding that $2.4 million for up to 2 to 3 to 4 years. We don't know how long it's gonna take to get it done.
If you want us to expend ARPA money now, and like I say, essentially reallocate general funds to college, then we could do that to make sure we're expending the ARPA. I take it.
Well, you
we could
either
easily
use
spend
it or you lose it, but it seems like a capital improvement to the wastewater, and I'm speaking for myself, council, would be the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. We can get these projects going with that, which has a sunset clause anyway. Of course, it's up to council whether we want to use it.
I think a lot of these projects at the plant are huge, substantial, that aren't gonna get paid for out of enterprise funds or the general fund for that matter, in any given year. There's just not that much go toward that project. What we have been talking about in our meetings about capital and whatnot is bundling up a couple of these projects and financing it with debt so that we can get those projects underway. Problem is that the projects that you bundle into that debt, you have to be able to complete them within a reasonable period of time, because the loan, whoever's giving you the loan generally says, we're gonna give you this money, but we're giving it to you for this, and you have to do it within a period of time, which kind of right now with supply chain and costs and everything else is like tripping over your feet, but I think that's really where we're gonna have to go with a lot of these, big projects for the treatment plant. The plant originally had, $25 million in debt, to build that new plant out there. And we paid that debt off. I think the last loan paid off very beginning of this year. We made the last payment on it. So the treatment plant and the water system, the only debt we owe for water and sewer is for the new meters that we put in about 5 years ago now, Jim. So that's the only debt we have out there for them. So there's plenty of capacity within the enterprise fund to have debt and to be able to service that debt, and to be able to go after some of these projects.
Does this still apply, the fact that we can still borrow up to $225 million, right, for the town, something like that? It was like a large amount.
If you borrow that much money, I quit.
No, but I'm just saying, I mean, we're borrowing for a park, why not? This is a necessity that the town needs.
That's what about.
Just like I feel like the college street is also a necessity. You have people that can drown from a flood. So I think, I don't think that few is talking for, it can be one person that dies, that's enough. Don't you think that
I'm not getting into this with you about that. Val is saying that we're going to borrow the money, the enterprise fund from the sewer, that's your projection, would cover that.
Yeah, we would have to sit down and figure out what projects are shovel-ready, what ones can we put together, and what ones can we reasonably get done within a period of time that the debt would allow. So, there's a lot of planning and pieces that go into it to make it work, but there's no way we're gonna fund, a $5 million centrifuge, a $3 million whatever out of.
In 1 year.
In 1 year. We're just, the funds aren't there. You have to go for debt. And that makes sense to, future users of that system then are paying the cost of that debt, but they're also the ones using the facilities. And over the last 20 years, we all paid the debt on the original plan. So, that's.
So the proposed action this year, is this what we're doing this year? Are we borrowing this money?
We haven't gotten down to what projects can we put together and actually do within a reasonable period of time.
Right, but this slide specifically states proposed actions this year. As we've heard, these are pretty, it's a substantial amount, but are we moving forward with this? And that was only my suggestion with the ARPA funds for these lower cost items. Keep that in there. Is this still up in the air? I mean,
there's only two in there that's budgeted. That's in the wastewater treatment plant budget right now, and that's the potable water and the electrical. Get them designed and
Concrete is reasonable enough that it can still be budgeted for.
so this slide basically, what does it mean? Are we gonna we gonna expend 3.812 million?
I don't think that's the plan for this coming
So
year.
for the centrifuge,
Just a research fund.
that's the research funding and potentially start later. I mean, because even if we tried to buy it today, it's probably not gonna be here before next spring, more than likely. I'm sure it's a huge lead time for that very specialized piece of equipment.
Yeah, the biggest thing for the biosolids
Yeah.
was to research the funding and come up with sort of workable solution.
How long does it take for us to apply for the loan to see what's available out there for the $50 million that we should invest, or what you're saying, $10 million for the next 5 years?
How long does it take to apply for that? It
Yeah, it
depends on
shouldn't
how
take-
you borrow it. There's different borrowing mechanisms, and
Which one was it, the one that we used for the waste?
we use
facility?
bank
Did we
debt,
use that one?
qualified bank debt, which you can only pull up to 10 million per year in qualified bank debt. Anything over and above that, you have to do bonds, which we typically would do through, the consortium or Virginia Water Authority.
So can we
Those,
apply
the
for
big bond debts, if you're going for over $10 million, those you can only apply for twice a year.
So can we apply for the $10 million?
Well, the 10 million, we could finance $10 million in bank qualified debt and have it within 2 months. Yeah. I mean,
So
it's
that
really-
means the beginning of the next calendar year, by then it will be here. What is the
Yeah,
probability of us
if you had to do a big, like $20 million, and we had to go through bonds, then rather than us spending $250,000 to get rated for bonds and
No, I'm just
all of
asking
that
for the
stuff,
$10
we would
million.
go through, name of it. But anyway, we just apply through them, and they fund the bonds. They fund hundreds of millions of bonds per year, and then we just take a piece of that.
I'm just
and then
asking about
20,
10 million, because where
Oh,
are
the
we?
10 million we could have in a very short period of time.
So in less than 2 months, we can have the money. What are the chances of us being able to qualify for that grant, for the, not grant, but for that loan?
For the 10 million?
Yeah.
Oh, we would qualify, yeah.
So we can technically do all this work within, and start as soon as possible within the next, by the next budget year. And then start budgeting for that items and trying to get that $10 million loan to pay for the majority of these projects.
Yeah, what we're trying to figure out what's the timing of all of these projects and which should we do first? And because you can't manage all of those projects at one time. There's a limit to which you can manage at any point in time to oversee. So that's kind of the thing. Don's done a lot of it, but I don't think we've totally put together a program of how quickly can we get this done.
Don, if we get you the $10 million in a loan today, would you be able to do all of this work?
And is that what you guys are, Randy, is that what you and Val are proposing for this year's budget?
No.
Or $10 million?
No, first of all, we need to know what's the priority, and then what's the cost, and then which ones do we take on first, second, third, fourth? Not just
Borrow money and set it
throw
aside,
the
yeah.
money aside.
Well, you have to.
There's the 0 to 5, there's the 0 to 5 year, which says that we spend $2 million a year to upgrade certain projects, and so what's the priority? And how much do you really need, and how fast can we do it, and then where do we go get the money from? Instead of just slapping a big pot of money somewhere going, all right, let's cherry pick what we're gonna do. What is the order of, and this is just throwing crap at the wall, hoping something sticks. And, we need to know what sticks so that we can accurately figure out as a council what we're gonna.
Well, obviously, the shovel-ready projects that he's described could be, these are the things we could do pretty quick.
Yeah,
These
but
are the projects.
Well, I don't think it, I was a little wary about tonight, because in years past, when I first started on council, this is how it was. 6 people were knocking stuff out, making more of the bad guys, right?
yeah,
So we changed about 3 years ago, and I put it on Randy, which is our town manager, which is our hinge to funds, to make these decisions and then present them to us. I understand this is great information for us, but is there a working budget right now with everything we're seeing today?
I was asked to kind of give a overall, presentation on water and sewer pending projects and stormwater projects from the Water and Waste Committee. So that's part of the reason we've kind of talked about a 5-year window with it. We obviously are trying to give you the projects that are in the proposed budget as we're seeing them, to get your input on those. That we will include in the budget that you'll be getting next week. But only,
So are you gonna include
the
a $10
items.
million, loan, which Joanna mentioned, to pay for these
No,
projects?
it's not planned, no.
Okay, so.
But you could if it
Well,
was a
that's
direction of
That's
council.
the council directed. Does council want to direct staff to borrow $10 million?
That's what I just said.
So what does council want to do? Because, in my opinion, Randy has to present us something. This is all great, but as we just saw on the slide that said, this is what we need to do this year, that was like $6 million.
Just a Christmas list.
Right, but we're not doing it. So what I want to know is what you're going to present to us. Because we can sit here for 3 hours going through every department, saying,
Well,
we
what's the
like
last-
this and we like that. I want you, as our town manager, as our CEO or our CFO, to present us something.
And
And
what's
then if
the
we want to steer you, let me speak, okay?
I'm waiting.
Just like in years past, or at least the most current years, you guys know, your departments know what they need. You guys know what we can afford. Present us something, okay, which I hope you're gonna do next week. Okay?
All right. You done?
Sir, thank you, that's
Thank
all I
you.
have.
Staffing and compensation.
Okay, new positions that are included in the budget. We do have positions that are included in the current fiscal year for Parks and Recreation, which we haven't hired yet, that will be in next year's budget also in association with the park. Also, we have the 4 new positions in the budget that are from emergency services, that we are basically rescue positions that we're proposing to fund through revenue recovery. Of course, revenue recovery, as you know, is funded through our recovery of revenue through billing, compassionate billing with rescue. In regards to staffing and compensation, just for your information, the town of Blacksburg, Montgomery County, Pulaski County, and Radford City are all including a 5% COLA in their proposed budgets. I know Blacksburg and Montgomery County are undergoing compensation studies with the intent of funding additional movement of their respective positions and pay scales. In the draft budget, what Val and I were considering to include is a 5% COLA and a 2% merit. Also targeted increases after COLA of $40,000. And those were based on the Susco pay study from 2018 in part, and also comparisons with the Virginia Career Workforce labor market information, Montgomery County, and also state data.
What are you proposing?
That is what we're proposing, is a 2% merit, a 5% COLA, and targeted increases of $40,000 with next year's budget. Also shifting all part-time and minimum salaries to $15 an hour for employees.
That's your lifeguards, that's custodians, that's the whole,
Yes.
the whole 9 yards.
Yes, minimum salary for everybody under the proposed budget would be $15 an hour.
Now, here it is, that's your proposal, here it is what I think we should do personally, and that's my opinion. My opinion will be that you should stagger I feel like an increase for a lot of the managers that are here, and I'm not talking about that you guys do a bad job. I think you guys do a great job. But the thing is that a lot of the employees that are making $12, $13, $14 an hour, when you talk about them giving them a 5% raise, it's not a lot. For you, you make over $150,000, that raise is over, what, 5%? It's over $7,000, $8,000 in a year increase. For someone that works $12 an hour, that increase an hour is like what? 50 cents is like 60 cents increase per hour. You're paying that person that's making $12 an hour, $12.60. With all due respect, all the managers right now don't need a raise when we are missing a whole bunch of employees in public works. What are we doing to have all those employees work for us?
Well,
Where is the money going that I'm not finished.
Yeah,
Where is
get
the
into
money,
recruiting.
where is the money
Joanne,
that,
let's just move
where
on.
is the
Randy,
money?
don't-
I'm not
You're
done.
done.
I'm still
You are
talking.
done.
I am not done, I'm still
Mark,
talking.
you wanna take her out?
I'd like
What?
to, I'd
Excuse
like,
me?
hold it, I'd like to understand what you're saying. You're saying that Joanna, you want to forego any merit or COLA increase for management. That means department heads, supervisors, managers, assistants.
Big crew leaders.
Right.
Yeah,
Is that what
until
you're saying?
yes, until we start hiring more people.
Well,
And
that's recruiting though.
and then
We're talking about pay
well,
right now. I'm just trying to understand what you're
with the
saying.
biggest problem that we're having right now is not
I
collecting
understand.
managers.
But what you're saying
My
is,
biggest problem
we
is
don't-
having employees.
you're saying we forego giving any type of merit or COLA increase to any leadership position within the town,
You
correct?
can do a 2% or something like that, you shouldn't do. What
Okay.
my advice will be, let's
But that's
start,
not what you said.
let's raise, will you let me talk? Let's
I'm
raise,
trying to figure it out, what
let's
you're saying.
raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. No employees working for the town should make less than $15 an hour.
That's
Is
what
that
we
what
just
you
did.
just said, you
That's what we
proposed?
just-
That's a
Yes.
proposal, and I agree with it. I'm
Right,
not
but
finished
you-
talking. And then the next thing that I think we should do is, if we're going to be giving an increase, if what our minimum wage was $12 an hour, I
We-
think everybody should have an increase of $3 an hour.
So he
So
already
the
said.
person that's making
listen,
$18 an hour should be making $21
You
an hour.
understand Randy proposed increasing the wage positions to $15, am I right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what
And
you
I
just
agree
said.
with that, but I'm saying, if someone
No,
was
no.
making $12 an hour,
That's already proposed.
We don't
But
have
I
anybody.
know, but
I'm
what's
trying
the
to
minimum
understand,
increase right now?
Did you just say you want to forego any increases for department heads, assistant department heads, managers, and supervisors?
I
Yes or
think
no?
right now, yes. I
Okay.
think what we
Because you
need,
just said 2% about 30 seconds ago. You'd be good with
right
giving
now,
them 2%.
I'm really concerned about hiring people. We need to hire people.
So,
We need to start with the $15 an hour
which is
minimum,
proposed.
which is great.
So
I
that's
think,
over here.
let's do it $16 an hour so we're
So
competitive.
now you're saying another dollar?
Yes, why not?
So you
I
said
mean,
12 plus 3
Why
a few
will I
minutes
want to
ago,
work,
it's 15, and now you're saying in less than 3 seconds, add another dollar to it.
yes,
I just want to make sure. So the 15 he's proposing, you want it increased to 16,
yes, yes.
which just a minute ago you said 15 would work for you.
I'm just giving an example. If we went from $12 an hour being our minimum wage for the
What's
town,
your proposal?
my proposal is to stagger those amounts. So for example, someone that we use, so if our starting rate was $12 an hour,
He's already said he's going to
Let's
do
do it.
but you're not
$15.
letting me finish. It went from $12 to $15, let's for say today, or 16. If you're having an increase of $3, we should raise everybody by $3.
Which will be what?
You know, for example, someone that's making
what is
$20
that
should
per
be
hour?
making $23 an hour. Somebody that's making $30 an hour should be making $33 an hour.
So the
Okay.
people
So-
making $65 an hour should make $68 an hour.
Yes,
But not if they're salaried, right? Wage.
this moment, yes, salary, wage.
Do we have anybody making $60 an hour as a wage?
Well, if you're making $60 an hour, I don't think you,
I guess-
at this moment, what I'm really concerned is about getting employees.
Whether or not.
Well, that's gonna, we're gonna pull council in this budget proposal when it comes down the street. I mean, I like the presentation given.
Right,
because-
but that's for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's a hierarchy, that's.
What do you guys propose?
That's part of the reason we are having this meetings for discussion and get your input in regards to how you feel.
I think if we're not competitive, if all of our neighboring towns and cities are providing that 5% cost of living rate, and we are not competitive with that across the board in our positions, our people in those positions will go, they don't appreciate us, they're not investing us, and they'll apply for the neighboring town and cities positions.
And everybody's looking for people.
But they haven't done that in all the places every year, Tanya.
Yeah.
And I kind of agree with what you're saying, but I also agree that it's not enough increase for the low-paying positions.
Right,
I feel
but
like they need a 5% increase at someone that makes $14 an hour. It's not a lot.
Yeah, but they would be bumped up to $15 an hour,
That's
right?
more than 5%.
So they would be getting more than 5%.
Let's
if
just
they're
say
under
someone that makes
15.
$15 an hour today. That $15 an hour person is only gonna make 70 cents more per hour. $15.70. That's not a lot.
But
To be able to compete with companies like Chicken Filet, Target, right now Target, some of the positions are paying $26 an hour.
And they can't find people to work them either.
I think that if we try to compete with every position that is in every salary that exists, we will never make everyone happy. We will never be the most competitive in all fields. But if we look at our positions and the cost and the pay and the salary that people are receiving in our neighboring towns and even outside of our neighboring towns and jurisdictions, we have to be competitive with those like similar types of positions. And if they're raising to 5%, we should be matching them. I know that if you're making $15 an hour, then you get 5%, and that's a tough bump, but we have to be competitive in those
Let's
positions.
move on from wage.
But they haven't increased every year.
Let's go to salary employees.
So let's do the
Do we-
same thing. If they
Who
had an
wants to move-
increase
Move
2
on.
years ago, let's be compatible exactly with them. I don't think, because some of those places didn't get raises in some of the years. We
I'm
did.
trying, Sam, let's
Well,
just
there's
move on.
there's two people in here that's causing the conflict, in my opinion, but.
Ben, what do you want? I mean, this proposal is out there.
They try to call me out now, I'm not in this.
Well, I mean, Joanna even asked you guys what, but, I mean, she threw a proposal out which eliminates all raises for.
Andrew, could you go back to the next slide, go back to one? That is what I agree with.
Okay, good.
Are you satisfied?
I'm happy with it.
All right.
Okay. And then they get into the increases of
Well,
minimum
Randy
wage.
and them are asking for direction to this.
Yeah.
Because when they present a budget to us, is that when you want us to weigh in and say, oh, no, we're not gonna do this? We're not gonna do department heads raises?
As close as final as we can get it, hopefully next week.
Okay, so what do you want from us?
Are you comfortable with those percentages?
Okay.
That's what I recommend.
The 70, the 8, or the 5 and
The
Two,
two and the
COLA,
five.
merit, and the 40,000
The
incidental.
two, the five, and the 40,000.
Yes.
And,
I don't vote, it's okay.
I think to be compatible, we need to start at $16 per hour, and that's just my opinion. Does anybody else
Tim?
in here agree
I-
with
At the
raising
moment,
that amount?
no, I think we need to stay at 15 for now, and I agree with what Tanya's position was, that if our neighboring towns are advancing and we don't do the same, then people are gonna look for employment elsewhere to do things. So at the moment, I concur with this plan to do 5-2, and I own a business, I know how hard it is to do this. $15 is, you know, you can't hire people.
We don't have any full-time employees right now, making less than $15 wage, people making less than 15. Because our lowest paid maintenance worker was $15.60 an hour or something like that, 15.06, is that correct?
No, we still have a few that's right under 15.
Yeah, but.
Yeah. All due respect with matching Blacksburg for their COLA, I can see that. Does Blacksburg, Bradford, Montgomery County, do they give a 2% merit on top of that?
They are not proposing that in their budget, although, like I say, they are doing compensations and budgeting target increases, as I understand.
But they are doing bonuses, sign-out bonuses.
I'm not sure about that. I asked what they were doing, and they told me basically the 5%, COLA and targeted increases with the salary
No, I was
stuff.
just talking about record savings. Can we do, on top of this, can we do a bonus signing for people coming in to try to entice them to come and work for us? I mean, a $300 sign up after working for us for 3 months, I think, I think we need to think about being,
Yeah, but that's back to, you're going back to recruiting again,
And we haven't been able to have an actual recruiting, session for 2 years, is that correct? To have an actual, let's sit down at the rec center and invite everybody, we haven't been able to do that for 2 years. Because of COVID, but we have 2 coming up now, so we're gonna start with that. And I think the basis of knowing, hey, starting salaries will be over $15 an hour when we get through this thing, so that's competitive enough.
Where does the money go? Because we are planning to have all these employees working for us, and let's per se, Public Works, we don't have steady-something people right now. We're not paying for those positions right now, and all the other workers are working extra hard to be able to compensate for the work that all these other people that are not there. How do you work that in the budget? Because that's definitely a savings, and it's a quite a bit, enough amount of money in the savings. Where is that money going? Is that money going back into the general funds? Is that money going back into some kind of employment?
So at the end of the fiscal year, if there are savings, first of all, because you have a lot of people compensating for other people not being there, they're paying more out in overtime. So some of those savings end up paying overtime costs or trying to pay contract services or whatever to get those people. So it's not 100% savings because you're paying it out in overtime and trying to pay for contract labor. But whatever funds are not spent fall into the fund balance at the end of the year, because it's money not expended that was budgeted. And that becomes a part of the unassigned fund balance that we have to play with the following year, and do that. So,
Like you have your majority, can we move on?
Can I ask one real quick question?
Of course.
Is the 5% and the 2% increase, in addition to the $15 an hour, or for the folks getting bumped to $15 an hour, if they meet that 5% and 2% at least, will they be?
The targeted increases is above the 5% COLA. In other words, a portion, the 5% is already, it's in the COLA formula, it's not in the targeted increases, is what I guess I'm saying.
Okay.
But it is addressed in the COLA increases for the people of the targeted increases. And just for, I guess, discussion, if you were to want to fund something like the targeted increases now, we would probably want to look at increasing the, maybe going ahead and doing COLA for them at the same time. If we were to move them, just because pay-wise, it's easier to do that. It's one pay shift versus 2 for finance staff.
Yeah, it is one of my concerns when we talk about this, and I'm sorry, I'm going back to this one. You have someone that worked several years working for us, for example, that was making, $14 an hour or $14.50. Now they're going to be getting paid $15. And now you have someone that started it for, say, $11 an hour, and spent several years with us. Now they're making the same amount that somebody else that's being there that just got there. How is that fair?
We're addressing compression with the salary movements. So if somebody was making 15, yes. Basically, this is where the shifts would be occurring. And so it's not necessarily everybody, you can see, obviously not necessarily everybody making $15 an hour. And this is in part, like I say, in part from the study that CESCO did in 2018, and also from comparisons to Montgomery County and state salaries for equivalent jobs.
This is factored into what we just saw.
Correct.
So you have a maintenance worker making $16 an hour, and, I mean, not a maintenance worker, a head lifeguard making $16.63. But then you have a normal lifeguard that is part-time. What you're saying is that everybody that's part-time is making over $15 an hour right now, right? Or is this just an example?
But the part-time people are limited to the number of hours that they work. So they may only be working 20 hours a week and making $300. This guy's working 40 and he's making $700 a week.
But we do have a lot of people that have worked for us for many, many years, being part-time
But
employees,
that's
right?
that's the economy. That's the way the world has been before. I mean, you hire on at a job 20 years ago and they offer you what is a good wage at that time, and you perform and you advance, then you can't help what happens down the road. I mean, you can't quit and start all over again. You see what I'm getting at? I mean, if I agreed to start with the town 20 years ago at $12 an hour, which was a good rate, if I had performed and the increases of the things, I would be well up above that figure by now, the $15, $20 an hour. So it's, I mean, it's the starting salary is irrelevant as to what the economy is today. Today's economy requires, in order to get people to go to $15 an hour. 10 years ago, it may have been $10 an hour starting. So, I mean, it's just, it's the, I don't want to say inflation, because it's only a year and a half old, less than a year old, but, I mean, that's the way things have progressed. Now, I started my first job at First National Bank and made $400 a month, and I thought I was rich, right out of college. Now, I'd rather sit home and take handouts than the $400 a week, but that's just the way the economy, just the way things work back then. That's just,
So what else you got?
move on.
Okay, something that, we brought up at emergency services meeting, we, of course, Montgomery County is hiring new, EMS positions, rescue, and they are basically in direct competition for those positions, very similar job descriptions. They are currently hiring right now for, EMTs at $19.23 an hour, advanced EMTs at $20.19 an hour, and paramedics at $22.26 an hour. That's compared to the town's current $16, $16.50, and $19.10 respectively for those three positions. What I would propose, if council's willing to do it, is to shift to $20 for EMTs, $21 for advanced EMTs, and $23 for paramedics. I'd like to do that shift as soon as possible, because I do fear that we will be losing people in the county otherwise. Obviously, they're skilled positions. You can't necessarily easily hire for those positions. We do have currently right now 2 vacancies in those positions. Several have confided in Billy that they've applied for positions there, and I do think there's a possibility that we could lose those positions if we don't.
And so Ms. Hockett and I had a meeting with the emergency services last night, and we both agreed after much discussion to try to bring this to the whole council, because we fear that we're gonna lose, you know, some very key people to the county that, you know, if we don't do this, we're gonna be hurting, and we were already short. You know, we could have told you that we're short this many people in EMS, and we can't afford to lose them. And so we asked Randy to put it in for the next council meeting as a budget item to move it forward. And Tanya,
I would like to see that.
It wouldn't actually take a budget amendment, because it would be revenue recovery that we would fund it from. So it wouldn't take a budget amendment, still be revenue recovery money.
That for this fiscal year,
And we would propose to do this basically March 28th, if council's agreeable. We put it on
for
the
this,
yeah, we wanna start
the
now.
remainder of this year.
If not, we lose those 4 people.
Basically for this quarter, $23,000 the cost for this quarter.
And then you're gonna factor it into next year.
Yes, next year it'd be
Higher this year.
$92,000 cost next year.
Okay. And that's all revenue.
The currently ones that we have working right now, are we able to give them additional money for them to stay?
Well, you could
That's
give
what
them,
this
you
is.
could give them a bonus, but this is giving them a pay raise.
Okay, so the ones, you're talking about the ones that we have right now.
This would affect,
future
this would
hires.
affect everybody
In future
at rescue, because there'd be some compression movement included in that. Well, actually, I think just a little. But it include everybody at rescue other than the chief and, the deputy chief.
Right.
So I'm glad to see that actually Montgomery County is also going to be starting to pay for firemen and rescue people. How many employees is that again?
They're hiring 4 additional bodies, but they're not gonna be for our station. They're gonna go to Shawsville and, was it Reiner, Chief?
Yeah, Shawsville and Reiner, we're gonna staff a ambulance in Shawsville and one in Reiner.
Yeah.
And are they gonna work after hours too?
So they gonna work what?
After hours, after 7
They're
o'clock?
working, they're gonna have an ALS person available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
So this is what the 4 jobs are gonna do?
Not our 4 jobs, it's what Montgomery County's 4 jobs are gonna do. Our 4 positions are gonna be additional positions, for needed staffing to be able to cover all of our costs.
But they raised their,
Montgomery County's starting pay is on the top line right there, that's what they're starting their people out at. We currently have at least 4 of our full-time people that have applied for jobs with Montgomery County. There's not a great big pool of people to choose from in Montgomery County, Pulaski County, or the surrounding area. All the EMS stations are asking for sign-on bonuses to get people to come work for them. Their salary structure is higher than our current structure is, and if we continue to lose our people to other localities, we're gonna have a hard time backfilling those positions.
No, and I agree with this increase, I definitely do, because I think it's needed.
Any chance of bumping each one of those positions up $1 an hour? Before we pass the budget? Instead of going to $20 an hour, you go 21 for EMTs, 22,
I will
and
second
24?
that.
Well, it's, what the, you
I
guys
will
are on,
second
I
that.
understand that, what, you guys met?
So,
You guys
we
came
did
up
not,
with this figure?
this was proposed to us, and we
Okay.
didn't discuss anything in addition. This is already more than what Montgomery County is offering, and I am not aware of anyone locally who is paying more than this, although I can't say for sure. I think this is really competitive, and this will keep our people that are here and help recruit for those positions. I don't know that $1 more is necessary
Well,
to
you know, when you think back about it, if they, I mean, they're with us now, we raised them to $20 an hour. They also get the 5% COLA. Is that true?
Are they?
They're employees of the town.
Yeah.
In the budget year, for 5%, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
We could handle it either way.
Yeah,
We'll have to
I don't
have an
think so,
amendment,
not
right?
the way we've got it structured right now.
Okay.
Can I make
Y'all
a
do what's
comment?
best, but
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Minimum starting pay for Montgomery County was listed. If they have a trained person come in and they wanna pay them more than minimum starting pay, they can offer them up to whatever their maximum pay is.
Traditionally, you kind of have a midpoint, and if somebody has,
Beginning point, the midpoint, and the
has,
upper point.
say, 7 years of experience, you might hire them in at the midpoint.
If
We
you have
can do
a,
that too, right?
Yes, that's correct.
yes, we do it too.
What's their midpoint?
Off the top of my head.
I can't.
we'll have those figures prior to
But we're, you know, again, we will be shifting our scale too. So our bottom of our scale is still gonna be
Okay.
comparative to the bottom of their scale.
So when you say you're shifting that scale,
Yes,
you're
that-
saying, you're
that
not
is a-
saying
that is
necessarily
a
bump them
minimum.
to this exactly, you're saying shift the
Correct.
whole scale up and
If
apply it.
if somebody were to
Okay.
apply for any one of those positions and they were to have substantial experience, we could hire them in at a higher
Same
rate.
for our people who are in there right now, you wouldn't necessarily bump them to this exact number, you would bump them to where they belong in the scale to
Correct,
ensure that they stay, because we want them here.
correct.
Okay.
And that's kind of what I'm talking about with, like, the compression issue is, basically when we're addressing compression, that's essentially what we're doing, is we're addressing people with experience, moving them even though because we're moving the bottom pay scale.
And that would then, and I think you guys were talking a little bit, that, would they get that 5% on top of that at that point, or is that a discussion?
I'm not sure that we've built it into the scale that way.
I don't feel,
No.
We applied the 5% for their salaries first, and then this was included in the target increase.
Are you going to present this at council for a public hearing budget amendment?
Yeah.
It wouldn't take a budget amendment, we put it on there, I guess, for a council vote.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
it wouldn't
as long as
require
we
a
have a
budget
head
amendment,
nod, that's
but
what we
it
wanna
would have
do
to come.
tonight. When we will vote on that $22,953 that it's gonna cost us for the remainder of the year. So it doesn't have to be a budget, we can just approve.
Basically allocate it from revenue recovery.
You don't need to do a public hearing, just put it on and do it.
Okay.
I say put it on.
And Tanya and I agreed last night to have it put on, we just wanted you all to know ahead of time, this is what we want.
Yeah.
And would like concurrence, you know, at the next meeting, so.
So that means if we vote on the next council meeting, that can take effect ASAP, right?
That's correct.
28.
28 is when.
28, okay. Any more staffing and compensation issues we haven't argued about yet? Community support? I think, at this point.
Ray, is this, Val, is this the last slide for the evening?
Yes, I believe it is. Oh, there's just a couple, yeah. Last item. So this was,
The next one's the last one, then.
sent out to everybody a while ago. At this point, excuse me, sorry, we will include what is, listed under 2023. That's what's in there right now, unless you all return these to me.
How many have you received?
We've got two.
Two.
I'll get you mine.
Do you
You
have,
need another copy? Anybody need another copy?
Can you give me a copy?
Sam, we're on the verge of this being the least amount of time we spent on.
I know that.
We've
We've been.
Henry?
I know, I might have
Hours.
jinxed it.
Hours.
I may have jinxed it.
Councilman Showalter.
Can I give you an idea too? I think you should have an abstain option as well.
If you want to abstain, just put a line through it, and I'll note that as abstain. Okay? Can't vote yes or no, so just put a line through it.
Right, so,
Okay,
next.
so I'll hand those in before the end of the meeting. Al?
You timing this,
Do you want us to handle that as 4 votes you include in the budget as we've done in the past? Do you want the mayor,
majority rule?
do you want the mayor to vote?
He only votes if there's a
I only
tie
vote in case of a tie, so if there's 3 and 3 on a particular one, then that's the only
Okay.
one I.
So bring 3 ties to the mayor?
Yep.
Okay.
one question I have, I would think if there's a limited pot of money to go towards community support, that might influence how I would prioritize things.
There isn't a actual limit, it's really at council's discretion.
Based on the need.
There's been talks of establishing a limit, a percentage or a certain amount, but that's really at council's discretion.
We've discussed that every year for years and not done anything.
So why do we keep waiting on this?
Well, you have to, in my opinion, you have to do that before the end of the calendar year. You don't pop it on all these people who've applied now and say, hey, we're not gonna do it, we've asked you to apply for these grants.
So what
But
we
every
really.
year, it just keeps
I
getting
mean,
pushed.
but we
So
have
what
done
we
this
really
2
need
years
to
on the
do-
road since
What we
I've been
really
here.
need to do is, as soon as we approve the budget, whenever, that's when we start on this. And if you'd like, I'll be glad to assign a committee of council to work on it. Send it. You come back with your ideas. If you wanna put, we've talked about putting a cap of $15,000. We've talked about putting a cap of, you can only apply two years in a row.
Skip 2 years,
And,
skip a
and
year.
these type things, but then you have to look at the complexity of what we're asking to fund. I mean, you got $18,000 out of the museum or the library, they'll fold. So you have to look at what services, but anyway, that's a horse that will be down the road.
Yeah,
I
one
have
of
it
the
on my
problems that I have
calendar
with the
to meet
application.
with you in July to start that whole process.
one of the problems that I have with this whole application process is that we either do what we say we're gonna do, or we don't give the money at all. Because I think one of the things is that I feel is very unfair is that you have, you know, the whole thing with the salaries. If that was the deal back in 2019, 2018, or even so what that were there, you know, about salaries,
Are you talking about town employees or these
we're talking about community support.
Okay.
You were talking about, you made in some of the comments that I was watching from a video that I watched the other day, you were mentioning that, you know, the museum was cultural.
From 2015.
2018, 2019, that the museum was a cultural thing, but yet the Christiansburg Institute wasn't.
I never
And-
said that. I've always said that the Christiansburg Institute is a cultural organization.
Well, that's not what it sounded like.
You're lying right now. I've never said that.
Well, you were talking about that.
You were lying.
You were lying.
I'm not
said
doing
that
this.
you were-
You all are not
You say you were
doing
not-
this. Johnny, you're done.
If somebody's going to
We're moving.
accuse me of something, at least get it right and don't lie about it.
Do you think it's cultural?
Yes, I've always said it was.
Why will you not want to give, you made excuse and said, you make excuse and said,
This isn't a
if we
personal
are
attack
gonna
on me,
have, if we're
Joanna.
gonna have,
Joanna, are you going to support all these organizations? Are you going to
we
support
should
each one of these
follow,
organizations?
that's
Which
my,
ones are
that's
you
my,
gonna-
that's
Let's-
my
let's
thing,
quit
that's not
talking-
yours.
We're in the moment right now, all right? And we've already established you've already lied. So don't keep building on your
Is it
lie further
lying?
and further.
You said that the museum was cultural, but yet
No,
when it
I've
came down
always
to
said
Christiansburg
Christiansburg
Institute, you
Institute.
said, we shouldn't give them money
I never, for
if
what?
they are not going to use, if they're gonna use it for salaries. See, you make a comment
That's
and
part
say-
of our application process. They can't use it for salaries. Am I
And
correct?
so, but the museum is using it for salaries.
Who is?
The museum, isn't it using it for salaries? He's talking in the letters, he's talking, and he's right there on the letter, he's saying that it can be used for salaries, right?
That's what it says on the top of the application.
It can be.
It can be, I thought we cut that out.
Cannot be.
Cannot be.
It cannot be used, but yet the museum sent a letter. Wasn't it correct that they sent a letter saying that this could be used for salaries?
They may have wanted
You know,
to use it as a salary
you know,
for their administrator.
Do we have the receipts from
The
this?
truth be known about anything that we put out there, once we write the check, you know, we're based on their honesty. I sit on a couple other foundations, and we don't like to do salaries, but how do you know they don't?
We
it's a
should
general
know it.
operation.
We should know it.
Well,
We
her
should do
point-
it, or we should not do it. We should take that out of there. Well, we should
Are
take it
you
out of
gonna go
there
up to
then.
that organization and start pointing fingers at them like you just did to me tonight?
No.
And lying
Show
to
up-
them, and then
show up-
us depending on you coming in and lying to us all
Right.
in the
I'm not
citizens?
lying to you.
You just lied.
You said that the Montgomery Museum was cultural.
Y'all ready to go? Anybody
You
ready to
didn't
leave?
say
And I
that the
also said
Christiansburg
Christiansburg Institute is as well.
You didn't say
I've
that.
always said that. You can go ask Ms. Lee, you can ask anybody I've ever dealt with.
Do you think that the money right now should be used
Quit
for
lying.
salaries?
Stop
Do you think
lying.
it should be used for
It's on the
salaries?
application, no.
All right,
Then it shouldn't be used for
I am
salaries.
standing, you all are done. I don't want to hear another word out of either one of you tonight. Am I understood? Move on, Randy.
Okay, so next, week, we will present you a draft of the budget as is required by our policy. We'll then see what other work sessions we need to schedule with council. We'll have to hold a public hearing on the water rate increase and also a public hearing on the budget. And then we'll consider any of those comments, make adjustments as deemed appropriate, and the final budget must be approved by June 30th. I like it when you approve it a bit before that, but
Can we have another work
that's
session
the
sometime
legal
soon?
deadline. Pardon me?
Can we have
We'll
another
discuss
work
that,
session?
we'll discuss that when we get the budget. You're on timeout right now.
So yes, the additional work sessions are
Yeah,
at council's discretion.
Kindergarten.
Thank you.
Right.
We will have a presentation of the budget at the next meeting. We'll have, like I saw, a couple things for your information. This
Oh,
is just
yeah.
kind of a historical, consumer price index change. And what I use to look at is the change in annual increase for southern urban, which is what Christiansburg's classified as. Also, it's got historic, COLA and merit increases for the town. And also just at your seat, just a list of what's currently in the draft for the capital.
Okay.
For fiscal
Is
year
that-
22,
That it?
or 20,
Turn in your things and we're adjourned.